Hi, my name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help people to build an intentional and significant legacy for themselves and their families by coaching them in real estate. And today what we're going to be talking about is really covering a topic I get fairly often, and that is how do you drive on the roads in Alaska? Because it's pretty inevitable every winter time when I'm driving around, you're going to see a lot of people that slid off into the ditch or obviously didn't do so well on the ice, and that's a big safety concern up here. So we want to make sure that we address that in a way that's actually going to help you and that's practical and tactical and stuff you can actually put into practice as soon as you get up here. So I'm really looking forward to that. Before we get started though, do make sure you give this video a like and you subscribe to the channel so you can receive more information like this in the future as you're deciding if you want to move up here to Alaska. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's video. First off, I'm going to say you need to make sure you've got some pretty decent winter tires for whatever vehicle it is that you're going to be driving. You can drive two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. It's perfectly fine. Either way, it's better to have some kind of winter tire or all-season tires at a minimum. You can get studs, you can get chains, you can get all that other stuff too, but at a very bare minimum, make sure you've got all-season tires at a very bare minimum. Secondly, be aware of what kind of vehicle it is that you're driving. If you have a four-wheel drive, that's all fine and good. If you have a two-wheel drive, you need to pick your battles very carefully and know what you can and can't do. Me personally, I drive a two-wheel drive vehicle, Honda Accord hybrid, so I obviously can't win very many battles that I pick, okay? So I'm going to avoid steep hills and I'm going to avoid a lot of remote locations, especially during the winter time. So be aware of what it is that you're driving and what its limitations are. That's number one. Next, I would say treat every hill with a ton of suspicion, because they exist here in Alaska just to ruin your day. That's the only reason that they're here. Like I said, two-wheel drive, and there's a lot of places I just dare not go anymore during the winter time, just because I can't get up the hill. I could do it just fine during the summertime, not during the winter time. There's some exceptions. We'll get to that one in just a little bit, but treat every hill with a ton of suspicion, regardless of how short or how seemingly gradual it is. Kind of going back to what we said before about kind of understanding your where you're at and understanding what the limitations of your car is, I'm going to just reiterate that. Even if you drive a four-wheel drive vehicle, don't just assume that you're bulletproof and you're invincible on the road, okay? There have been plenty of times when I've been driving and you see this, stereotypical big old like F-350 truck just blasting by it, something that's going way too fast for what you'd be doing during the wintertime on the highway. And sure enough, ended up in the ditch not too long after that. So even with a really good vehicle, you've got to be smart, and you just got to understand what the limitations of your vehicle is, and never just assume that the specifications of your vehicle is going to overcome your own stupidity. If that's too harsh, I'm okay with that. Next, do not be afraid to drive slow during the winter time. Alaska is a very transitory state, so we get a lot of people who are up here where it's their first time driving every year, and you see a lot of people that are going pretty slow on the road. That is perfectly fine, because honestly, I would much rather someone going 45, 50 in the slow lane than someone that's going 65, 70, 80 going down the road who has zero idea what they're doing or zero experience on the ice, because that surefire way that's not going to end well. So don't be afraid to drive slow, especially when you're taking turns. Don't slow down to just zero, but also just understand how your vehicle takes turns and how sharp of a turn you can take in the wintertime at a certain speed without it just fishtailing on you and ending up in someone's windshield. So let's avoid that. So don't be afraid to go slow during the wintertime. Now, inevitably, you're going to fishtail and you're going to slide around occasionally when you're driving on the ice up here, and that's pretty much unavoidable. It's going to happen at some point. So what I would say about that, though, when it does happen, you find yourself sliding towards the ditch, you don't overcorrect, okay? And this is something that's really tough if you've never driven on the ice before. But if you find yourself kind of sliding towards the ditch, what you don't do is suddenly just try to veer it off in the other direction. That's a surefire way to lose control of the vehicle. What you do is, first off, you let off the gas pedal, okay? That's number one. You don't stomp the brakes. That's another good way to lose control. So just let off the gas and you turn the steering wheel into wherever you're sliding. You're going to wait just long enough for you to regain control of the vehicle, and then you adjust slowly back to where it is that you're going, okay? Do not overcorrect, just take it and rip it off this way, because that's a surefire way just to spin out and lose control. And don't stomp on the brakes, another great way to lose control. So, again, I feel like I've stated this one enough, but I sure hope it's clear. Do not stomp on the brakes, do not overcorrect. Okay, hope we've made our point now. Let's take a quick break from today's video. Did you know I actually do host a podcast as well called Alaska Journey? In this podcast, I do actually answer the questions of people who are moving up here to Alaska, and I also tell the stories of authentic Alaskans in their very different backgrounds, whether that be in commercial fishing, whether that's living on Kodiak, whether that's living up in Barrow. Just a lot of different perspectives I bring together in this podcast called the Alaska Journey Podcast. So if you haven't done so already, do make sure that you check it out, and be happy to see you there. Now, without further ado, let's finish today's video. Another thing that I would point out is you need to be very aware of how the temperature outside is going to be impacting the snow and how much traction you're going to get on the road as a result. For instance, past couple days, I, again, drive a two-wheel vehicle. I did not listen to all the tips that I'm now giving to you. I consider myself an expert because I've made all the mistakes at this point. I've paid the stupid tax for you. But I ended up stuck at the bottom of a hill, not the same hill, but ended up stuck at the bottom of a hill twice within the past 5 days, and had to have a neighbor go get his big manly truck and haul me out of there. So not a good moment, nothing that you want to experience yourself, I guarantee you. And really what it came down to was I wasn't paying attention to the cold and how that was impacting the snow and the traction. Because when it is really cold, like close to zero, what's going to happen there is the snow is going to be powdery and it's going to be hard, and you're going to be able to get some pretty good traction. So whereas a couple weeks before I could get up hills pretty easily, well, not easily, but I could get up hills and be just fine. But same hill a couple weeks later, when it's about 30 degrees, did not stand a chance, just because there's no traction, and the snow became very damp and very absorbent of any kind of torque or energy that you were putting into it. So make sure that you're very aware of what's going on with the temperature outside and how that's going to impact the snow that you're driving on. Big deal, okay? I'll leave it at that. There is a good chance that if you follow all of these tips, you're not going to end up in the ditch or needing any kind of help. But there's also a very high likelihood that you're going to end up in the ditch anyway. So when that happens, you're in luck. Alaskans are very good about pulling over and just making sure that everybody's okay and offering assistance. Sometimes there's nothing they can do, but usually they're just trying to make sure that you are okay and the situation is in hand before they keep going. So that's very nice. But yeah, most Alaskans are going to be pretty willing to help. What I would say though is be aware of how cold it is outside when this is going on. Because sometimes, especially if you're from the lower 48, you might not be used to it being particularly cold. And if you're out there, let's say it's 20 degrees or something like that, and suddenly the car just goes down for whatever reason, and you no longer have a source of heat, well, that's something you got to plan for. Which brings me to my next point, the things you need to keep in your vehicle in the case of an emergency. Number one, have some kind of snacks along the way, and these are going to be put away separate, we'll call it an emergency kit. You don't touch these any other time except unless it's an emergency. So have some kind of snacks, have some kind of set of extra clothes in there just to make sure that you're going to be kept warm. Make sure you have an extra blanket. Make sure you have gravel or you have some kind of kitty litter that you can throw down on the ground and give yourself a little bit extra traction if that's going to help. Sometimes that does the trick. So make sure you've got that. Also, there are little plastic strips, for lack of a better word, where you can essentially put it down and you can drive up onto the little strips, and they've got some good treads on those, and you can use those to give yourself a little momentum. So make sure you get one of those, and make sure you have some kind of a small snow shovel in there also. Maybe not like a full-on size, like ready to go do the driveway kind of a thing, but make sure you have some kind of snow shovel in there, so if you need to dig yourself out of something, it's at least a possibility. And also, make sure you get some kind of a rope or some kind of a towing cable. So if somebody does need to pull you out, you've already got that all ready to go. So those are kind of the big things I would make sure you've got in your vehicle when you do come up here, that you have those ready to go just to be on the safe side. Our plan is not to end up in the ditch, but we're going to make sure that you're taken care of if that is the case. Thank you for watching. I sure hope this has been useful for you. If it has, do make sure you give this video a like, but more importantly, if you have any questions you would like to see answered in future videos or topics you'd like to see covered in a little bit more detail, make sure you post those in the comments section down below. And if you haven't done so already, do make sure you check out my Facebook page and my Instagram page as well. Those are going to be kind of showing you what's going on in Alaska and kind of give you a picture of that. If you need to contact me directly, Facebook is going to be the best way to do that. Just message me through through the Facebook link, which is going to be down below. And without further ado, I do appreciate you, and thanks for watching. See you next time.